Well, it's still good morning and welcome to HogvilleNET YouTube Live. It is Friday, January 3rd. We are less than a day now. Well, just about a day. It's a noon tip off tomorrow. The SEC opener for Arkansas. It is a doozy. I guess wherever you are on this glad green earth, if you're a Razorback fan, you're going to be paying attention. The Razorbacks 23rd rank in the Associated Press Top 25 poll, on the road at number one Tennessee. A team that's unbeaten 13-0. There's some comparables to make today as we preview this game. We're going to talk a little recruiting a little bit later. But right now we're really focused on this matchup as it's a full slate of games in the SEC. And we've been talking about how brutal, how loaded, how incredible this league is this year. And it may be the greatest league at this juncture before you get into league play, before the dust will settle later in postseason. At this point in a season, it may be the best league ever. 16 teams, the league expanded by adding Oklahoma and Texas. Everybody knows that. The football season played out with those two teams in the league. But you've got 10 teams out of the 16 that are ranked. You've got a ton of quad one and quad two games in the 18 game slate. Nothing below that. And when you look at the net rankings and how the quad works with that, and that goes for every team. I mean, just opening day on Saturday, it's not just Arkansas at Tennessee. You've got two other games with two ranked teams going head to head. You've got Florida at Kentucky. You've got Oklahoma still unbeaten. Florida still unbeaten. Oklahoma at Alabama. And then, so you have three games where both teams are ranked. So that's six teams. And then you have four other teams that are ranked, hosting teams. Every single team in the SEC has at least 10 wins in non-conference. You only get 13 non-conference games. It is absolutely insane. Absolutely insane how good this league is. And really the metrics, I mean, Calipari said it very recently in I think in the last post-game press conference. If you go 7-11 this league, you're going to have your share of quad one wins in there, and you're probably going to have a postseason, an at-large NCAA tournament at-large bid worthy resume, regardless of what you do in the SEC tournament with that automatic bid going to the winner of that gauntlet. And where Arkansas was, I've said even recently, kind of comparing it to the rest of the league right now, sort of a middling, maybe that 6 to 9 range, but with all the potential to live up to that top 3 or 4 that we talked about in the preseason. And again, right now, the metrics are even improving for Arkansas when it doesn't play. You go back to that first and only quality win against Michigan, that's been almost a month ago. December 10th, not quite a month, about 4 weeks by the time you played Tennessee. And Arkansas had a lot of time between games, playing UCA and North Little Rock, beating up on North Carolina A&T, and then Oakland and Bud Walton Arena in Fayetteville. A lot of time over there. But you've seen Arkansas actually move up. Part of that's been because of some of the opponents, quality opponents Arkansas's played, even the ones that lost to, like Illinois and Baylor. Some of the results from those teams, including Illinois' big, just blowout road win a day or so ago over Oregon, a top 10 ranked team in the country on the road in Big Ten play. But some of that's helped Arkansas's metrics. But Arkansas's as high as it's been in a while in net, 37th. And there are 5 teams now that are below Arkansas in net, including Oklahoma, including Ole Miss, including Missouri, LSU, and South Carolina. So Lenardi in his last projection still had Arkansas as a 9 seed. That tells you they're not far from a bubble projection. But Arkansas's net continues to get better. I think the strength of the resume has gotten better by virtue of, instead of kind of up and down and struggling against some of these mid-majors that are quad 3 and quad 4, mostly quad 4, Arkansas's put the hammer down on UCA, North Carolina A&T, and then Oakland. In fact, the win over Oakland was by the biggest margin for the Razorbacks in those 3 games, and it's probably the more quality team compared to the others. The net ranking certainly was better. And so there are some things that are starting to trend well for Arkansas in terms of resume. In terms of what the Razorbacks face in Tennessee on Saturday, that's a tough prediction to say, okay, advantage Arkansas going into this one. I think it's the other way around, but I think it's going to be maybe a tighter margin potentially than maybe some think it might be going into it. I really think Arkansas's roster is set aside attrition. If everybody's available, I think the players and the personnel are set up. And from what I've seen now through 13 games, this team is set up to beat anybody. That's no exaggeration. Set up to beat anybody, including some of these top tier SEC teams that right now look like potential Final Four teams. Arkansas is not quite there yet in terms of body of work and what the eye test has shown you in games, but the pieces are there. It's just, can Arkansas stay healthy and have all hands on deck? That hasn't happened yet. That's a big factor coming into this game on Saturday. But anyway, thank you again. I'm Kevin McPherson. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. If you haven't done it yet, please hit subscribe, like, or share. I mentioned if you're a Razorback fan anywhere on the glad green earth, you're paying attention to this one. You can't ask for a bigger, better matchup if you're going to go on the road. All eyes are going to be on this in your league opener than on the road against the number one team in the country. You look at the metrics: Tennessee, number one in the AP poll, second in net rankings, right behind Auburn, another SEC team, and then third in KenPom. And you look at KenPom's ratings in terms of offensive efficiency, defensive. Tennessee's second in defensive efficiency in Division I and 19th. So top 20 in offense and second in defense. Those are the kind of metrics when you look at teams that go to the Final Four and then win national championships. They're holding those metrics. This is an outstanding. I think it starts defensively with Tennessee. We're going to talk both sides of the ball there. But the Volunteers are nearly plus 24 in scoring differential, just over 80 points per game, holding opponents to just over 56 points per game. That defensive scoring threshold is second in the nation. The margin, that 23-24 point margin, is third in the nation. So Tennessee is clobbering folks. And look, there's some common opponents. Tennessee is undefeated. We mentioned that. They've also played Miami the same day in the Jimmy V Classic that Arkansas got its first quality win over Michigan. That was the game prior to Arkansas's game and win over Michigan. But you look at wins on the road at Illinois by 2, and then beat up on Baylor, also in non-conference. 2 opponents that beat Arkansas. In both of those games, the Volunteers held those 2 teams in the low 60s in scoring. Now, we remember that Illinois loss for Arkansas. Illinois last night had one of those games like it did against the Razorbacks last night or the night before against Oregon. 100 points on the road, knocking down threes. Everybody's knocking them down. That's what Arkansas felt and giving up 90 points in a 90-77 loss. Arkansas hung in there with Baylor 72-67. That was the second game of the season. A lot's changed for Arkansas in terms of guys improving and becoming healthier, especially on that front line with Jonas Adu and Trevor Brazile. So this is a different Arkansas team, but Tennessee's been really good out of the gates. And that's what you look for in great teams, is consistency. This has been a consistently really good team. Is it a great team? Well, this SEC is going to prove pretenders and contenders, but I think Tennessee historically has been good in this league. Recent history, top tier. Last year, advancing finally under Rick Barnes to an Elite Eight. They haven't been as great in the postseason. Under Barnes, been spectacular, really good. I mean, really good in what was a strong league anyway. Now it's a great league, maybe the greatest league ever when you look at it right now. Just everything you point to this point says that it has been. And now you're just going to play against each other and somewhat cannibalize each other. So until the postseason, you're really measuring the SEC, 10 ranked teams right now. It's going to be hard. And you look at the net rankings, all these, again, are valuable games. No one's going to suffer a bad loss. Arkansas avoided that with its ups and downs. And even though the Razorbacks on a 6-game winning streak, that's great. But they weren't always, they lost their first 2 quality game opportunities. We mentioned that, Illinois and Baylor, but also struggled against some of those quad fours and didn't have quite the winning margins that net likes. And so there have been reasons to understand why Arkansas has been kind of, on that bubble a little bit or close to it recently. I think Arkansas is moving a little further away from it, especially as that net ranking now up to 37 again. And so that's outstanding for the Razorbacks. Remember, the Arkansas is 1-2 in quad 1, no quad 2 results, and the Razorbacks 3-0 in quad 3. So everything else, they're 7-0 in quad 4. But getting back to Tennessee, I mentioned the scoring margin, how good the Vols are defensively and keeping the score down. But how do they get there? This is the number one team in defending the three-point line. Teams are shooting 24.6% from 3 against Tennessee. That's tops in the country. Arkansas is a good three-point defensive team as well, just not that good. And then their second overall field goal defense, keeping teams under 35%, 34.7%. So this is a team that plays incredible perimeter defense. When I watch Tennessee, they just take away that 3-point line. And what happens is, even when you get a few open looks, there's a different amount of pressure on you to make those shots when you're not having much success getting to them, getting them off, and getting clean looks. So when you do, there's a different kind of pressure, and you see teams even struggle to make open shots against this team. That's how it kind of snowballs when you're a good defense team, because you don't have that many breakdowns or lapses when you're solid, when your communication's really well, when your personnel fits the scheme. And that's what Rick Barnes does a great job of, because when you look around at Tennessee's roster, I wouldn't say individually they're as talented as Arkansas. Not individually, no. I think Arkansas going to have players with higher ceilings when you look at the next level. But this is a program that's been established. It's been established as one of the best in the SEC year in and year out, and proving it once again. And the system works. And they've got veteran guys that have been playing in the system. I think that's the other thing. And one of the key pieces they brought in, Chaz Lanier, has a claim right now at this point in the season in that conversation for Player of the Year in the SEC. The guy's averaging nearly 20 points per game, making nearly 4 threes per game at a 46% clip. So Tennessee overall is not a great 3-point shooting team, but the key pieces are. And Chaz Lanier, the leading scorer, this guy has been going off. Now, he's not stuffing the stat sheet in other areas necessarily, but he fits into that system defensively, where it's not about necessarily individual guys as it is the collective. And then on offense, he is their go-to guy. He's the kind of guy that can carry you over the finish line as well in the end. And it's arguably the best backcourt in the SEC when you look at Zakai Siegler, another player that is really off the charts when you look at him in terms of his impact. He's been around for a while. Probably, as well as Boogie Fland is playing, as good as he is as a point guard, Zakai Siegler is the standard. I mean, averaging over 8 assists per game, nearly 12 points. He does turn it over. This is not a high turnover team. It is a low turnover team, but he's good for 3.5 turnovers a game, but he's got the ball in his hand so much. And again, over 8 assists. So his assist to turnover ratio is outstanding when you look at it from that perspective. But, it's nearly 4, it's not a big guard, but nearly 4 rebounds per game as well. Jordan Gainey, another veteran guard in Tennessee that has really been big, especially when games were tight for this team, making plays offensively around 12 points per game, but he's shooting 38% from 3. So the combination of those two shooters, Ziegler under 30%, but he's the kind of guy that it's not necessarily your efficiency with him, but when he makes them, he'll knock down some dagger shots. So their backcourt is arguably the best in the country. Their front court, I always say that Barnes gets more out of less there. They've got good talent there and size for sure, but it's Milicic out of their 3-headed sort of big man rotation there. And Okpara, the transfer from Ohio State, Milicic is averaging just over between 10 and 11 points per game, leads the team, and over 8 rebounds. But this is one of the top shot blocking teams in the country, as is Arkansas. They're both really close in that category. Arkansas a smidge better when you look at it statistically. Both teams averaging between 8 and 8.5 steals per game. Slight edge to Arkansas there. But Tennessee turns the ball over less than the Razorbacks. Roughly 1.5 to 2 turnovers fewer a game. That doesn't sound like a lot. But when you're playing at home against an elite defensive team that prizes the basketball and takes care of it, there are some other things. Tennessee shoots a few more free throws. Both teams are low in terms of how many times they foul a game. We know Arkansas is one of the top teams in the country in committing fouls, only 14.4 per game. Tennessee's a little better, 14.3. But Tennessee takes about 2 more free throws in Arkansas per game, and the Vols are a little bit better at the free throw line. Arkansas just over 72%, the Vols over 75. And so the reason I bring up these comparisons where they are a little comparable, Tennessee's just a little bit better in the margins when you talk about free throw efficiency, how many times they get to the line, and the turnovers. They turn it over less. And we know that Arkansas has a propensity for the self-inflicted ones, the unforced turnovers. And against a team as good as Tennessee is defensively, they're going to create their own share of turnovers. So you do not want that to snowball into a major problem. But I think Arkansas has got to keep those margins small and not have big gaps in these areas, because there's other areas where Arkansas is not as close to Tennessee, When you look at offensive rebounding, the Hogs under 9 offensive rebounds per game, Tennessee over 11. Tennessee's one of the top rebounding teams in the country. Illinois was too, and Arkansas hung in there against Illinois. It was just a 3-point game that killed Arkansas. But we'll see about this Tennessee team. Tennessee's 14th in the nation in rebounding margin, 9.5 more rebounds a game than its opponent. Arkansas's about 4.5, 5 rebounds per game more than its opponent so far. Not as good as Tennessee there. The margins are big, stretched out a little bit there, and Arkansas's not been a good offensive rebounding team. Tennessee's respectable there. So you start thinking about, what if Arkansas's in a close game? What if Arkansas, personnel-wise, I said it just a few minutes ago, that Arkansas matches up with anybody. Personnel-wise, Arkansas, talent, position to position, athletic talent, all of it. Not always skill, but most everything checks those boxes. It's just about a more veteran team that's played together, a better defensive team to this point in the season. So these margins, what if you find yourself in a close game coming down the stretch? Well, the team that takes care of the basketball better, shoots a little better at the free throw line, creates a few more free throw attempts than the other team, gets on the offensive glass better than the other team. These are the blue collar sort of things that play into, what's the outcome? Who finds a way to win? And you throw in the fact that Tennessee's opening up at home, Arkansas is going on the road. I've said a lot to say, and going through some of the individual stuff for Tennessee, to say I think it's advantage Tennessee. I'm not going to make a prediction, a full-throated prediction that Tennessee wins. I actually think Arkansas is going to be competitive in this game, and I think Arkansas is going to have a chance to win in the end. I could be wrong about that. I think, if anybody has a cakewalk, if it turns into one of those, I don't see that at all. But if it turns into a double-digit win for somebody, that I would have to say the home team, and for some of the reasons I just gave. Offensively, Tennessee's a little not quite as good as Arkansas. Field goal percentage just under 49%. It ranks 38th in Division I, 35.5% from three. Arkansas's a tick better than that. In fact, Arkansas's field goal percentage, when you look at it, 51.5% from the field. That's fourth in Division I. So Arkansas is elite in field goal shooting when you put it all together. 3-point shooting, we know Arkansas has been up and down in terms of one half, not good. That played out against Oakland, 33%, not horrible. 3 of 9 in the second half, you went nuts. 7 of 13, you finished 10 of 22, shooting over 45%. But it's been a lot of that in non-conference. Arkansas really hasn't put together necessarily two good halves of shooting from three, not very often anyway. But the Razorbacks at 36.8%, that ranks from three. That's better than Tennessee when you look at it percentage-wise. And it's 61st in all of Division I. Arkansas shooting 60% on 2-point field goals. And it speaks a lot to a guy like Adu Thiero, who's your leading scorer, getting all the way to the basket, where his efficiency is unreal. He's going to dunk it, lay it in, and he's just going to body somebody enough to get enough space. And with his leaping ability, all the package he's got in terms of a slasher, it doesn't get any better in Division I basketball than what Adu Thiero does in terms of that. And then you throw in guys like Jonas Adu. I know the last game he was ill, played only 16 minutes, but if you look at his body of work in Arkansas's winning streak, he's averaging right around a little over 10 points per game in that run, and shooting at a high percentage himself because he's getting dunks and getting play off really good interaction play with guys like Boogie Flan and DJ Wagner as facilitators in Arkansas's offense, which has been very effective. Very effective. There's no other way to look at it other than the unforced turnovers and not being a strong offensive rebounding team when you do miss. Arkansas's initial offense is creating really efficient percentages, high assist numbers. Arkansas's improved. For a while there, Arkansas was 1-to-1 in assist to turnover. Arkansas has spread that out to a point where they got to 1.5 to 1. So that's better. That's better. Tennessee's a little bit better than 1.5 to 1. Almost 17 assists per game. Nearly 11 turnovers per game. Again, Arkansas is over 12. So there's a gap there. Yeah, but you look at Arkansas, I mean, we talked about the fouls per game. Neither team fouls a lot on average. But again, Tennessee's just a little bit better there and gets to the line a little bit more. You hope that whatever Arkansas does to generate free throw attempts, that Arkansas is not having one of those off games like we saw them have, like against Illinois, where they can never really put themselves in a position to get over the hump. That game stood out in particular. You see a guy like Thero who shoots them in volume, one of the leaders in the SEC, and how many he's going to take. He was 6 of 6 in this last game for part of his 20 points against Oakland. So maybe there's a trend going on there. Again, Arkansas is on the road. This is going to be the most difficult environment Arkansas has been in all year. The team's had one true road game at Miami. Not exactly a juggernaut team. We know that. A team that's already lost a future Hall of Fame head coach in Jim Larrañaga and continues to lose. I mean, but it was a true road game. You did at least do that. You go back to exhibition season. Arkansas didn't play on TCU's campus, but they did play in TCU's, in Fort Worth, where TCU's campus is located. I don't know if that counted as a exhibition road game or not. Maybe it would be viewed as a neutral site. And then Arkansas's had several games off campus at neutral sites. So it's not like it's their first away from home environment, but at the same time, this will be like nothing Arkansas has seen at this point in terms of an atmosphere. You're going to be probably 20,000 plus for this game, would be my guess. And there's a chance that with as good as Tennessee is defensively, when you throw the crowd and you throw that, Arkansas relies at the end of the day, the second best assist man in the SEC behind Ziegler is Boogie Fland, who I think is Arkansas's MVP to this point of the season. It may be a toss-up between he and Thero. Some people may have Thero, but I've got it as Boogie Fland. He leads the nation for freshmen when you look at assists. He's nearly 16 points per game, over 6 assists. He didn't have a turnover in the last game against Oakland, so he's hovering around that 2 turnovers per game. So his assist to turnover ratio is better than 3 to 1. This is, he recently had a double-double with his first career double-double. I think that was North Carolina A&T maybe. But he's just an outstanding freshman point guard that reminds me of Lee Mayberry in terms of that impact of having a lot of talent around him and being able to set the table for everybody, because if you watch every game more and more, Fland seems more comfortable as a facilitator and less hunting and searching for a shot. Not that he was ever erratic about that, but it seems like even more so now, he's more comfortable in letting the game come to him and playing in a flow. And it's incremental, this progress, because he was never really bad in that regard. It's just it's gotten better and better. As solid as he's been, he's becoming more reliable. Now he'll have a bad half, like he did in the last outing, and then come back and give you 23. But this will be the toughest thing he's faced, and he's Arkansas's floor leader. So throw the fact that the defense, that environment, and then Boogie Fland facing that for the first time. I'm not as confident about what he might do in that game as I am about what a Ziegler might bring to the table. And sometimes, if everything else is even, that might be a difference. So I'm just throwing out some of the margins and how these teams play and what they excel at. And Tennessee being a little better there. And now we start talking about matchups and individuals. To me, the biggest matchup going into this right now is Ziegler and obviously Boogie Fland. And Fland's been exceptional. Again, he's shooting at an efficient clip. He's around 40% or so from the three-point line on volume. He's been shooting over 80% from the free throw line all year. And again, the turnovers, they're not that bad. They're not as bad as Ziegler's are. But his assists aren't quite there either. So but I go back to Mayberry. Mayberry back in the late 80s with all that talent, could score, could go get you 20 if you needed it, and did it often, but set the table first and was a very efficient player. This is what this player is. And Arkansas hasn't had that. As good as Anthony Black was a couple of years ago as a freshman point guard, the comparison's a little bit different because I don't think Black, we didn't view him as a 3-level shooter scorer, whereas Mayberry and Fland both are. As good as Black was, and very good defensively, and doing that right now in his second season in Orlando, one of the top defensive guards in the NBA. But it's a little bit different comparison, and I think Fland is more like a Mayberry in terms of, probably having a little bit more in his bag too as a freshman than Mayberry. Then Mayberry was really good. But we talked about Thero. He's another X factor kind of guy in a game like this, because one thing Tennessee does is their suffocating defense on the perimeter, and then they communicate so well, and they don't have a lot of assignment busts. So it doesn't matter what you're running, how good you are as a screen setting team and those things. you have to be really good and on your game because you're not going to have a lot of weakness there to take advantage of. But Arkansas has the personnel that if they're playing their best game or one of their best games, they can be in this game. And then you don't know what kind of pressure that puts on Tennessee. This is the league opener for Tennessee, and they're at home. That might shine a little bit of different thing. Calipari's team last year, some of these players that came with him from Kentucky tasted victory on the road at Tennessee, and Tennessee won the league last year at 14-4. Kentucky, a game out, tied with three other teams, a four-place tie for second place, but went on the road late in SEC play and won that game. We know these are different scenarios now, but it's not like the head coach is going to go in there with some level of fear or lack of understanding of what he's getting into. And say what you will about Calipari and his teams at Kentucky in the last 5 years in postseason, they've been pretty damn good with very few outliers in the regular season, one of the top teams in the SEC. And Arkansas has a chance to do that. As tough as this league is right now going into it, Arkansas is trending in the right direction, and Tennessee may just be an opportunity to surprise the Vols. There is an element of that as well. I mean, not like Rick Barnes doesn't know and Calipari doesn't know what the other one's doing. But at the end of the day, there are some unknown elements, I think, more about Arkansas than there are about Tennessee, because there is still some newness to what Calipari has here, especially if he's got all 9 guys ready to go tomorrow. Arkansas hasn't had that yet. And so that could be very interesting in terms of what develops in your matchup opportunities and how your rotation flow changes. And I've gotten 26 minutes in and even haven't talked about the Adu factor coming back to play against his old team. And I think one of the main reasons that is, and let's get into it, is because Adu, this last game was limited. Associate head coach Kenny Payne, Arkansas has been without Nellie Davis as well, the senior guard that hasn't lived up to what the billing we thought would be, but has missed the last 2 games. And Jonas Adu only playing 16 minutes last game out due to illness. So there's a little bit of unknown factor with both of those guys coming into this. Is Adu 100%? I expect he's going to play, but is he ready to go? Is there any kind of nerve factor for him? Or does he rise to the occasion and come in here and put up one of those games where you're like, wow, Arkansas's got a chance to be really, really good, win or lose this game based on what he shows. So we'll see about that, but that's a storyline. The fact that Tennessee's unbeaten, that may continue to carry some burden of pressure now that you're into this pressure cooker, the SEC, where all those games matter even more for your league record and how that sets you up for the postseason. And so maybe there's a little bit more pressure on Tennessee than there is Arkansas coming into this. Tennessee's built maybe to take on that pressure and thrive in it. That will play out, but I do give an advantage. I'm not going to make a full-throated prediction for the Vols in this one, but I will say that it's advantage Tennessee at home, and I do think Arkansas is going to find a way to be in this game with a chance to win it. If they get blown out, then I was wrong. I just think it's going to be a competitive game, and I think the Razorbacks will have a chance. There'll be points in that second half where Arkansas's within striking distance, and now you just want to make sure that's the case when you get to that 4 to 5 minute threshold and carry it through, chip away, getting under that under 4 minute timeout, that final timeout coming into the final stretch there. If Arkansas's in the game at that point, they're going to position themselves to have a chance to win. I went through some of the statistical stuff. Arkansas's, really good in a lot of areas. Tennessee's just a little bit better in some of those areas. Some Arkansas's a little bit better, but I still give the edge to Tennessee being at home and because of the veteran quality of that team. Arkansas's got its share of veterans, but they just haven't been through these kind of wars yet together like most of Tennessee's players have. Yeah, Chaz Lanier's a transfer, but he fits like a glove. I mean, that guy has fit like hand to a glove. He's come in and just been, arguably at this stage, player of the year in the league. Adu Theros and Boogie Fland are both having first-team All-SEC kind of tracks to this point. Not quite ready to talk player of the year for either one of those guys. Ziegler's a first-team All-League performer. This game is loaded with storylines and top performers. Tennessee's just been the better team to this point, but that doesn't mean that Arkansas can't go in and do the job tomorrow. This is going to be a great game. I'm going to come on and do my in-game and post-game. I'm going to around the 10-minute mark, 10 minutes to go left in the second half, I'm going to come on with my YouTube live. So I'll be back on tomorrow. The game tip off is at noon, and then it's on ESPN. So it's on the mothership. It's a big one. A lot of eyes will be on this one. Slide edge again to Tennessee. Let's talk recruiting just a little bit. 30 minutes in, once again, thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. I'm not going to start with updates on guys Arkansas is after right now. Sometimes it's a habit of after signing guys, getting commitment, signing guys, kind of moving on, putting them behind, and start what are we getting next? It's one of those greedy kind of things. It's just how sports works. There's nothing that in the immortal words of Gordon Gekko, greed is good. So it's not that that's bad, but let's not just leave guys on the shelf. The holidays, you start looking at the high school events, stretching from the Thanksgiving holiday through Christmas and the New Year. There's a lot of these national tournaments, national events, national showcase games through that month. And some of Arkansas signees did nothing but prove why I've said before the season started, when they started accumulating guys in the early period, it was Acuff. He committed in July. Then it was Malik Thomas in early November, signed a few days later. During the period, it was Isaiah Seeley. If you look at all three of what Arkansas has on board already, we know the rankings, the recruiting rankings have Arkansas with, a top 5 recruiting class. Doesn't matter the service, Arkansas's top 5. And it's the top backcourt in the country. That's what you get when you have 2 top 7 rated 5-stars and Acuff and Malik Thomas. And Seeley's not chopped liver, although he's ranked a bit down. After seeing him recently and at some of the competition he played against, he's underrated. I felt that way before, but now I got to see him go head to head in recency against some of these guys that are ranked higher than him. I'm like, man, this guy's underrated. But the idea was, and I said it back then, I said, not only does Arkansas have the best backcourt discussion over in this recruiting class on the high school level, just based on the rankings of players, but the eye test tells me it's valid. I've seen enough of these players compete. Well, all they've done is go out and prove it more and more. Let's start with Acuff, ranked 5th in one of the services overall in the country, a 5-star, obviously, 6'2", 6'3" guard at IMG Academy by way of Detroit. This guy's been putting up crazy, crazy games all season long for IMG Academy. It's anywhere between mid-25s to mid-30s in scoring. He gets plenty of assists, but he's making clutch, big-time plays at the end of games. If you look at him, we always said he's got a skill game, but he's also really strong at that size. He's got good length at 6'2", 6'3", but he's just put together right. He's strong, and he just puts it all together in a score facilitator way. This guy's ranked ahead of where Boogie Flan was a year ago. They're not the same kind of player. They actually competed against each other last year in high school. They're not the same kind of player, but they're both can be very devastating as scorer facilitator. I still see Acuff as a score first guy, but he makes the right plays. And the more you watch him, it's not only that he's putting up these big games with good efficiency, but he's making game-winning plays, big shots at the end to win it. He's done it multiple times. In the city of Palms, which is, just a couple of weeks ago, down in Florida, one of the biggest events with a ton of 5-stars, some of the top programs and players in the country. He went off, got his team, made some big plays late in games to get his team to the semifinals. They lost to the Boozer Twins team in the semis in a close game, and Boozer's Columbus High School out of Miami went on to win it. But Acuff in that event, 32 points a game, 6 assists, 4 rebounds, 1.8 steals, and he shot 52% from the field, including 44% from 3, and nearly 77% from the free throw line. So you look at his efficiency across the board, it was there, and then the numbers were there, but this was against top-notch competition. In an event a few weeks before that, he was 1 assist away from a triple-double. I think had 27 points. It was either 10 assists and 9 rebounds or 9 rebounds and 10 assists. But Acuff has proven that he's not only a top 5 player in the country, and I've always said this, if you're top 5 or even top 10, you've got a strong case as the best player in the country. And I think that's what Acuff is. I think he's got a chance to, the way he's playing right now, he's got a claim for that. Not that the services will get him there, but he's backing up a notion that he's got a claim for it, because a lot of this is head-to-head against some of the top players in the country. And you hear this float around. He is the best point guard, lead guard in the country. That's it. And sometimes you hear other names, Mikael Brown, uh, uh, Fleming, the Flemings kid, that Arkansas was in the top Final Five and ended up at Houston. But Arkansas has got the number one point guard in the country, lead guard coming out of it, and that's Acuff. So despite some of these other claims, I just think it's him, and I think it's proven on the court, not and against, you got to look at the level of play and against other teams. Malik Thomas, an overtime elite, the 6'4" guard out of Pittsburgh, seventh ranked in the country. We know that, a 5-star. 8 games so far with overtime elite. And the numbers are just astounding. 29.1 points per game, 8 games played. He's got 30 plus in 4 of those. He's got 4 double doubles in points and rebounds. So half his games, he's over 30 points or combine that with finding ways to get to double doubles at 6'4" in your backcourt. But 29.1 points per game on average, 8.6 rebounds, and 4.5 assists. So he's doing a little bit of everything there. And also 1.8 steals, but 46.4% shooting from the field, 37.1, that's respectable from 3, and then 83.6% from the free throw line. So you talk about the efficiency of both Acuff and Malik Thomas playing against really good competition, and then numerically, when you start looking at the averages across the board, just really, really strong performances. And I want to say this about Isaiah Sealy now. I mean, to me, Acuff, the top lead guard of the country. Darren Peterson, widely viewed as the number one shooting guard. I'll take that. I'll accept that. But I think Malik Thomas is right there. I think he's right after that. So there may be some discussion. Maybe there's other people in that conversation. But I've got Malik Thomas as the second best shooting guard in the country, behind Darren Peterson, and I've got Acuff as the number one lead guard. And look, Isaiah Sealy, getting to see him at the King Cotton Holiday Classic in Pine Bluff, that is a loaded field every year. They had that long gap of years back when it used to be the premium high school tournament in the country where ESPN would come, Dick Vitale, all that. And it's back to being one of the top events out there. It's not the best event. I would put City of Palms, but it is a really good event. And they bring in really good teams with 5-star talent, and a lot of D1 players, if you're not even the ones that aren't 5 stars. But Sealy went off 3 games. It's a tournament format, 3 games total for each team that was in the tournament format. And he led Springdale to the King Cotton Holiday Classic over all the years. Not many in-state teams actually win that event, but Springdale did. Sealy, 20.3 points per game, highly efficient, stuffed the stat sheet everywhere else, but led his team to that title. Now, look, he didn't just go up against, they didn't load that field so that he got to play against maybe the weaker teams. Springdale was lined up against, and the way the bracket lined up, their first game was against Westminster, a team that excelled and played in City of Palms the week before, with 2 high-level guys, a 5-star that Arkansas is recruiting in the 2026 class, Alex Constanza, a 6'8" combo forward, and then Alex Lloyd, a 6'3", 6'4" guard that's already signed with Florida, a top 30th guard that's explosive, can shoot, everything. This team's got 2 high-level players, a 5-star and 1 knocking on the door. Springdale won that game by, I think, 9, 10, 11 points, and Sealy had 24 points in that game matching up against those guys. That was round 1. Second game that I was there for personally was going up against Duke signee, 2025 national top 15 5-star, Shelton Henderson, a 6'5", 6'6". When you look at Shelton Henderson in person, he looks like an NBA player. He certainly looks like he's ready to play and battle physically on the college level. But he's got that kind of body. But he went head-to-head against Shelton Henderson, the name of that team is slipping my mind right now. I know it. It's just gone blank on me. But against that team. And so you're matching them in that game. Sealy got in immediate foul trouble. High school games are 36 minutes. He ends up playing 18 total minutes, half the game, sat for long stretches with foul trouble, but still ended up with 13 points, 7 rebounds, and 6 assists. And when he was on the court, he just outplayed Henderson. Henderson ended up with 15 points. Springdale did a good job on him. Springdale's got a good team. Springdale's not loaded with Division I players outside of Sealy, but they got some D2 guys. But Springdale in that game, one of their better players, their top frontline player, DJ Hudson, was even sitting out. He didn't play. And Sealy played with foul trouble. They still won that game. But Sealy outplayed Henderson. Despite Henderson playing most of the game, he wasn't in foul trouble. Sealy really outplayed him. And then in the championship game against Bishop Ironton out of Virginia, Sealy, another 24-point game. So he ended up Tennessee 95, Arkansas 61. Well, there's a prediction. Look, if any teams, if you were to tell me now somebody's going to win in a blowout on Saturday between Arkansas and Tennessee, I'd say that'd be the Vols probably. I just don't think it's going to be a blowout, but if it is, so be it. I mean, Tennessee's the better team, the way it looks to me right now. Sometimes the better teams don't win. Sometimes they don't win on their home court. A lot of times they do. Most of the time they do. So we'll see. And you know, matchups come into this. You know, Tennessee's system of play, especially defensively, they don't always have the best personnel, but they win matchups because they buy into the system, they communicate, and they've got veteran guys that have been doing it for a while, and even the key guys they brought in have fit, again, hand to glove. They've just fit. They fit really well at this point. But getting back to Sealy, when you watch Sealy, 6'7", very versatile. I've talked about it so many times, but he can play the 1, 2, or 3. He can lead your team as a lead guard, but he can play off the ball. He's got a nice shot. He was efficient the night I saw him. He was efficient throughout that event shooting. He's just got a little bit of everything. He's probably gonna have to add some weight and strength for sure. He's probably a little bouncier than maybe people realize. You know, you have to be there in person to see it. But he's got a lot of nice craft in his game. And the one thing about him is he is a great complement to other pieces. He's just not one of those guys that has to be the focal point every time down. And he's really hunting his shot first and then makes plays off of that. He plays the right way. I say it so many times about the best players out of Arkansas. That's the case. The one thing the last time we were on was Arkansas's game against Oakland. So capping that though, I wanted to say, right now, I mean, this is the MVP. Sealy was the MVP of King Cotton. His team won it. I mentioned he was going head-to-head against some of the best players in the country. Arkansas is getting a dandy there, not as highly rated. But to me, these guys right now have backed up the fact that they're the best backcourt in the country. They solidify the idea this is a top 5 rated class. And Arkansas is still working on it. But when Arkansas played Oakland, they had a visitor from that 2026 class, in-state 5-star. ESPN ranks him the 16th best player in the country. J.J. Andrews, 6'7" wing out of Little Rock Christian Academy. That was a really good visit. I've said a couple of times in our last 2 segments, I think Andrews, Arkansas is in the lead there. I don't have any insight to say, you know, this is coming from his camp. It's not like that. This is to say all the factors point to it for me. And something else, something weird would have to happen, in my opinion, for it not to track that Arkansas is going to eventually get him, whenever that is. And it would have to be something to do over NIL. I've said it so many times, there's valuation ranges Arkansas has. There are limits to what they'll do. So something weird would have to happen there. But I think Arkansas is the leader in terms of what I expect to happen when it plays out. So leader now, and I think they'll be the leader in the clubhouse when the dust settles on J.J. Andrews, who is probably one of the most blue-collar 5-star players I've ever seen. This guy has a motor that never stops. You look at his stats playing at Little Rock Christian Academy, you know, not always the top quality of competition, but some of it has been. Had that monster double-double against Springdale back in November, even though Springdale won that game by a big margin. This dude put up monster numbers in that game. But even recently, you're seeing a lot of 30-plus games with 12 to 15 rebounds. He's just got an unbelievable motor, an unbelievable will to win. He grinds. He's determined. Another kid that just plays the right way. And you know, as I watch him, he's a lefty. His perimeter skill continues to get better, and he may be on a pace to, by the time he's a freshman in college, because remember, he's class of 2026, where he's a good enough perimeter shooter and has enough perimeter skill to go with the other things he's doing right now to be a real force potentially as a freshman at the college level. Either way, he's going to help Arkansas as a true freshman, whether he's a force or just a good player. But he's a guy that's got a chance to be that kind of player. And when I talk about him again, I say Arkansas, he's taking other visits. There's other schools in the mix. He's got other visits scheduled. I think Arkansas is in the lead there, and that'll finish that way. Again, something weird will happen. We'll bring it up if there's trouble in the mix. We'll get to it at some point and talk about it. But I do think that the fact that he was on campus for that visit, attended that Oakland game. He tweeted out the next day. I guess Arkansas played Oakland on Monday, so New Year's Eve he tweeted out photos from the visit in the Hog uniform. Man, he looks the part, but I'm telling you, he plays the part as well. He doesn't just look it. But man, what an outstanding young man he is, J.J. Andrews. All right, Muhammad Silla, Arkansas's, in the final three there. An announcement could be coming at any time. We were thinking to be here over the holiday break at some point. Maybe it stretches out a little longer, but it's down to Arkansas, Oregon, and Georgia Tech. Those are the three schools I've mentioned the most the last 2 or 3 times we've talked. I think the time before he actually cut it from 5 to 3, those were the 3 that I highlighted is still in it. Kansas, I mentioned for a while that they had backed out, and sure enough, they didn't make the cut. Washington was the other team that was originally in that final 5. So that's trimmed down. So we're waiting to see the 6'10", 240. We've talked a lot about what he brings to the table. And if Arkansas were to land him, it'd be Calipari's first high school frontline player to date, because the 3 he brought with him from Kentucky out of the high school signing class were backcourt wing players. And we know that that's what it is. We just talked about all 3 from the early signing period. Nate Amend's another one where Calipari continues to put a focus on him. At some point, I'm looking to see where does that land in terms of an actual visit. I've got a source that's connected with the NBA that told me he's heard that he's going to come and visit Arkansas on one of the big weekend games. And this source was wanting to know which game it was. He didn't know which game, but these scouts and some of these guys that are even connected to the NBA, they will come to these high marquee games to assess the talent on the court. And sometimes they just want to be in the building for whatever reason when a kid might be on a recruiting visit. I know some of those reasons. So it gets really interesting. So he's already heard that the kid's planning to come. He's just trying to figure out when. So they've done a good job, if that's already decided, of keeping that under the radar, because I don't know it yet. And if since I've been on, if something's come out about that already, let me know. But Arkansas is efforting a visit there, and it sounds like there's one in plan. But who is it? Which opponent is it? Because now you're getting into SEC play, and this stuff's going to start to, play out here. You've got home games on Saturdays against Florida. After this Saturday game against Tennessee, you come home for 2 games, host Ole Miss midweek, then it's Florida the following Saturday. So there's an opportunity. You got Oklahoma on a Saturday this month. Next month, you've got Alabama early, February 8th, I believe, in Bud Walton Arena. You got some other Saturday games or midweek games as well. So Nate Amend, a top 5 rated 5-star, 6'9" combo forward wing, jumbo wing in Virginia that Calipari's been out to see a lot. Has seen in these recent holiday events, gone out to watch him play, and the John Wall Invitational, we talked about that the last time we were on. So that is also significant to me in terms of Arkansas's recruiting. Mika Murnin, a top 10 rated 5-star that visited Arkansas in late September, a top 10 5-star frontline guy at 6'10", 6'11", out at Arizona Compass Prep. We'll see where that goes. He's looking to maybe reclass to 2025. He'll still be a 5-star if that happens, and I think still a top 10 rated guy, but we'll see what he does. We'll see if he actually does reclass. A decision that I was told could happen around this time as well, even though he really couldn't execute on that until the season ends anyway. And again, if he moves to 2025, he's not going to be able to do anything about that until the spring in terms of getting paperwork done. And then he could become a freshman on someone's campus when everybody comes to campus. Usually that starts, remember, late May, usually around Memorial Day weekend. So there could be a fast track for Murnin who the visits he's taken. I'm told Utah might be the team to beat, but he visited Utah. Then it was Michigan. Then it was Arkansas. And I was told from a source that spoke to him that the Arkansas visit was the best. And he's probably going to take some other visits, I think, setting those up. So we'll see where that goes. But Arkansas's got some options between Silla, Nate Amend, and maybe Murnin, and who knows, maybe who else potentially out of the high school rings. As we know, things change in high school recruiting, in all facets of recruiting, but also high school. And it's easier to get out of even commitments and sign paperwork than it's ever been. And so we'll see where it goes. But Arkansas, again, top 5 class as it stands, guards and wing. And now you've got a chance to add to that front line and expand that class. I've said for a while, I see value in it because of the attrition Arkansas's had this year, that you could expand your a top 9 rotation to 10 or 11 guys that you put your NIL into and bring in that can impact your season, which means you can expand your high school recruiting and your portal and retention. You can figure out a way to move those pieces around and maybe get more out of this, especially this high school class in 2025. So I think there are good reasons to do it. All right, we're going to wrap things up. 50 minutes in, we didn't get to an hour this time. I'm glad I was a little more succinct anyway. Brevity is not usually associated with my name. I am Kevin McPherson. Thank you for joining me on HogvilleNET YouTube Live. If something breaks in recruiting or something else we need to jump on here, we will. Probably not going to happen in the next 24 hours now. Arkansas tips off about a day from now at noon, ESPN. Number 23 ranked Arkansas at top-ranked Tennessee, unbeaten Tennessee. In the SEC opener, we're going to do, again, an in-game and post-game. So I'll be on in about 10 minutes left to go in that one to finish out that game and then do a post-game. But until then, thanks for being here, and I'll see you then.